Hello to all of my wonderful AP students, and this video is on the second part of Class 38, which is the spread of Christianity in land-based empires. So we ended the first day with me posing 4 questions to you that you investigated and reported out, and I appreciate you doing that. And those 4 questions, to refresh your memory: how Mexico became a majority Catholic nation, how did Christianity spread throughout South America, why did Christianity fail to take hold in China like other places in the world, and what process took place in enslaved African people when they converted to Christianity. So, to put this in a broader construct, I know we've already learned about the Columbian Exchange, and this was an economic thing, and this is very familiar to you, all these commodities, but it wasn't just economic items being exchanged during this time. Religion is on par with the economic commodities. Some would argue even more so. So religion spread as well along this Columbian Exchange. And hey, to put my money where my mouth is, you can see, look at that pink arrow, boom, bang, woo, bang. Okay, it's a big one, it's a major one. So hopefully I've made my point with that. So let's look at the European brain on the subject before I hit you with any history to see what they are thinking. So the English crown ordered their agents to conquer, occupy, and possess the lands of the heathens and infidels. Not a very nice thing to call people, but it rationalized their actions. Now, the Spanish crown sought not only to grab the land, but to convert any indigenous people to embrace the Catholic faith and be trained in good morals by any means necessary. And if you look at the governors like Diego Velázquez, the Cuban governor instructed Hernán Cortés as he departed to Mexico in 1519, bear in mind from the beginning that the first aim of your expedition is to serve God and spread the Christian faith. You must neglect no opportunity to spread the knowledge of the true faith and the Church of God among those people who dwell in darkness. So you can see where the Europeans are coming from before they even get on those boats. So anyway, group 1. You looked at the Aztec Empire's conversion. Now, in terms of Christianity, this was fairly understandable to the Aztec people for a couple of reasons. Number one, when they conquered other people, they felt these conquered people should follow their religion. So they had an inkling what was going on. And then we see this term that was probably new to you, cofradías. This was a church-based community that set up festivals. And if you look at the Aztec and certainly modern Mexico, the conversion is a full conversion. And another reason outside of this paradigm that they had, so even though the Aztecs were polytheistic, they had the idea of certain gods matching, for example, saints or whomever. Here's an easy example. Okay, this statue on the left is one of Tonantzin. Okay, now they were worshiping Tonantzin prior to the Spanish arrival, but eventually this turns into the Virgin of Guadalupe. So you see this slow, gradual syncretism happening. And again, all those reasons why people adhere to religion, Catholicism provided that for them. And you see, Christianity did adapt to the culture, was adopted by those in political power. It did answer all those big questions. So if you look at these 4 groups of people, this is probably the most complete, how can I put it, acceptance and buying into Roman Catholicism of the other, compared to the other groups. Okay, now this sounds really harsh, but it's logical. Smallpox was absolutely brutal to the Aztec people and all indigenous people of the Americas, and here's some logic for you. If you have less followers of the indigenous religion, there's less people to convert. And when the Spanish arrived, there were 16 million Aztec people. After about 30 years or so, it was a lot less than that. And if you look at a primary source here, here's a Franciscan monk who accompanied Cortés, and he said, as the Indians did not know the remedy of the disease, they died in heaps like bedbugs. In many places it happened that everyone in a house died. And as it was impossible to bury the great number of dead, they pulled down the houses over them so that their homes became their tombs. This illustrates just how brutal smallpox was to the Aztec people. Okay, now group 2 looked at how Christianity spread to the Inca Empire, the former Inca Empire. And just a little reminder, the Treaty of Tordesillas, the division between the Spanish and the Portuguese. So you know to this day that modern-day Brazil is Portuguese-speaking, and the rest of the continent, or certainly the majority of the continent, is Spanish-speaking. So just to remind you of that and where the Inca were located, which is the western portion of South America. Now, unlike the Aztec, the syncretism allowed more indigenous flavor than the Aztec did. And you can look at some modern festivals, and this is in Colombia here. You can see the flag, and you can see it's a parade like Roman Catholicism, but you can see that the people that they are parading look like indigenous people in these outfits. Even though this is a Catholic ceremony, there, you can still see the Inca traditions in this. So it was less 100% than the Aztec were. So a synopsis, in a simple way, the Spaniards arrived to the Inca in 1532. As the Spanish forced Christianity, the Andean people of the Andes Mountains syncretized their own religion with Catholicism. Now, many indigenous rituals and customs are infused with the Catholicism, and although it's very similar to the Aztec story, these people took on a different form of worship, which we see anywhere in the world where Christianity spread. People did put their own flavor and their own customs into it, but you can make an argument that the Andean form of Christianity has more indigenous flavor than the Aztec version. Okay, now group 3. Why didn't Christianity take hold in China? This one was probably the easiest of the 4, in my opinion. Here's why. China had syncretism for centuries. If you recall the vinegar tasters, you have Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism all dipping their finger into the vinegar, which is life, and they have this, blending of this Chinese belief system. Now, China is also the oldest continuous civilization. Bear in mind, the Yellow River is one of the 4 river valley civilizations, and China has had continuous civilization the whole time. Logically, they're doing something right if they're sticking around for that long. Therefore, Christianity doesn't fit into this concept of syncretism. Christianity, it's either 100% or 0. So it really violated the cultural paradigm of the Chinese compared to, say, the Aztecs, where it was a little more understandable in the way they think. And just a quick pause for the cause. Remember these belief systems. So Buddhism, the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and the 3 Jewels, and the divinity of Siddhartha. Well, there is no divinity of Siddhartha. He said, I'm just a man. The second religion that blends in the Chinese belief system, Taoism, Wu Wei, the duality, remember the yin-yang, acceptance of reality for what it is, the divinity of Lao Tzu. There is no divinity of Lao Tzu. He said, I'm just a man. You see a pattern here. Confucianism, the 5 principal relationships, the Analects of Confucius. And you know what? Confucius is what the West calls him. He said, I'm just a man too. Look at Christianity. Read John 3:16. Read John 14:6. There is one way to get to heaven. There is one way to do it. And a Christian certainly feels that Jesus is divine and he rose on the 3rd day. So you can see it does not fit into this Chinese paradigm as it existed. So in the end, Christian missionaries showed up there and they were exchanging ideas and technologies. Now, there was some conversion, but that became very contentious in future years. I will get to that, in the springtime, what happened in China. But as of 2018, there are 44 million Chinese Christians. That's a good amount, bearing in mind there's 1.3 billion people, though. So anyway, fractionally, it's fairly small. Final question. How did enslaved Africans become Christian? We've already learned about the transatlantic slave trade, the Middle Passage, and all this sort of thing. And reminder of the African diaspora. Now, 11 to 12 million Africans were captured by West African kingdoms and sold to the 7 European nations. And we remember that, the gun for slave exchange and that sort of thing. And as Native Americans died of smallpox, and we have this Columbian Exchange with this need to get raw materials, what this was a perfect storm to create slavery on a scale that human beings have never seen before. So this is the controversial of the 4, okay? So West African societies, the largest source for American slaves, shared a belief in the supreme creator, a chief deity among lesser gods to whom they prayed and made sacrifices. Through laws and customs honoring the gods, the ancestors of one people, and the elderly West Africans sought a harmonious balance between the natural and spiritual worlds. Further, they made music and dance vital components of their worship practices. Enslaved men and women kept their rites, rituals, cosmologies of Africa alive in America through stories, the healing arts, songs, and other forms of cultural expression, creating a spiritual space apart from the white European world. Now, I'm going to make it really simple, and it's more complicated than this, but there are two sides to see it. Now, some people will say Christianity was forced upon Africans. It was an intentional destruction of their beliefs and culture. It was a tool used by Christians to justify their acts, like Ephesians 6:5-8, where Paul states, "Slaves, be obedient to your human masters with fear and trembling, in sincerity of heart as to Christ." Now that's a very, dark view of things, whereas some have a little more positive view. They say it's more syncretic. It gave enslaved Africans hope during their ordeal. It infused West African traditions into this unique, vital part of African American culture. That it was a natural blending that connected to this deeper paradigm, this African paradigm of worship and deities. Now, I'll let you figure that one out for yourself. I'm not going to assert myself, but these are essentially two sides that make this question a little more controversial than others. So here's the final thought, or thoughts that I have. Christianity was a major force in history, and it has altered our world today. It has the criteria to be considered one of the 5 world religions. It demonstrates the 4 reasons human beings have adhered to religion. And hopefully you got this big word, syncretism, blending of religion, has occurred wherever Christianity spreads to, and has created a blending of culture that remains today. Okay, so appreciate your investigation, I appreciate your research, and I appreciate you watching this video. So stay well.